Hey, can you hear me? Good morning. Armand from Cool Trading Tools here. So we're going to go over a little bit of pre-market analysis today. Going to go over the NASDAQ and kind of the longer term stuff and what's going on, in my opinion. And also a couple stocks we're watching for day trades today. So and we'll rip a little bit too because I only see a couple setups I like. So I think everybody noticed yesterday, obviously we had a strong day in a lot of names. Like if you look at all over the board. NBIS, Monster Day, AAOI, Monster Day. There's just a lot of big bounces along the way yesterday. So I think, what does that mean, right? So we've been looking at this from last week. The weekly candle had a really nice weekly candle last week, which just indicated probably a bounce continuation at some point. And that's what we've gotten. I think that my base case scenario on the market, I mean, there's a few things going on. So I look at the QQQ primarily because it trades the most volatile, like best stocks for day trading for my type of trading. I think it is entering probably a longer term range for the remainder of the summer. I don't think we just V shape back into all time highs. That would be very surprising to me. Um, I think S&P 500, I mean, we're right back into all-time highs. It wouldn't surprise me. I would expect actually that we reject off of it today. That's been carried by the XLF and XLV, and that's actually been perfect, I guess, ideally what type of rotation you'd want when tech, which is normally the driver of the market, is down. The financials and healthcare sectors, two of the next two big sectors, are carrying the S&P 500 to keep it up. So interesting thing to think about in that sense, that the rotation is actually probably perfect for what bulls would want. I'm still slightly hesitant. I always do tend to have a bearish lean on a lot of things, though. So let me say what I think is good about this, though. One thing is, though, I do think today we are likely going to be pulling back. Um, and what I think about that is that this is the good thing about it, right? We have now made enough distance up for a daily lower high, right? So in these previous bounces here, you can look like this when we held support here. We bounced up and that was a good sized bounce, a few percent, but we did not create enough room for a daily higher low. So I'm of the belief that you need the trend change. You do need the trend change to change this daily trend back to the upside now. With this large bounce here, these last 7% in the last 5 days, we've now created enough room for a daily higher low. I do expect us to probably pull. I would actually expect it today, which we'll get into later. But what that's created now is we've created enough room for bulls to find a spot to bounce it at some point. Versus here, you don't have much room before it just breaks lows and you get the downtrend continuation here. Now we've moved up so high, there's enough room for a pullback that we can find a daily higher low the bulls can start to look to buy into. So I think that's that's the good case scenario for the bulls, is that have created enough room with this huge bounce to find daily higher low on this next pullback whenever that occurs, which I'm expecting sooner rather than later here. So uh, third thing, super important as well, the Fed meeting was this day. This move is driven not just technically with a big bounce, but it's driven by Fed meeting narrative where they held the rates, and so it's got a fundamental driver. So you're marrying technical and fundamental. So that even gives me more thought that we can bounce here. I still believe long term we're probably staying in this range for the rest of the summer, but I think that's still a good sign with everything pointing to the upside and just a good sign overall on this. So let me see here. Coming into pressures. So let's look into the day here, though. I do think, though, we've bounced 5 days, up. I mean, we've gone up last 5 days since the Fed meeting. I do think that we are coming into this previous kind of like whatever you want to call it zone of what was support. I think there will be finding some resistance here. So usually you want a day 3 or day 4 when you're in a stock that's in a downtrend. Usually day 3 or day 4 on a bounce is when we find the selling coming back in as we run into the moving averages. Now we're now gapping above the 20, but we're into this resistance here. I think that we will find some sellers today at some point. So hopefully this is perfect. We keep pushing right now, and we push higher into the open here. That'd be perfect. And what is my plan going to be? So I have two stocks that I'm looking. I'm actually going to be looking short off the open here. And like I said, I'm going to be getting more aggressive long in the next couple of days when we get the pullback and be looking to play that daily higher low on some names. I think that'll be a place where you can really take some shots. You can look on your swing list when the NASDAQ pulls and find some support here or attempts to. That's when you're like, okay, if you can find some good looking stocks and setups, that's when you want to take your shots versus chasing on day 5 of the NASDAQ pushing. So AAOI, this is going to be the first one I'm watching. I'm looking for this to short with the NASDAQ going down because we've gone from, let's see, $76 to 131 in 4 days. And so it's a 72% bounce in 4 days. It's liquid enough to day trade, 12 million shares, 9 million, 10 million. Sick range, 88 to 110 yesterday. So sick range, good enough liquidity, 72% bounce in 4 days, and it will move with the rest of the tech sector. As you can see, it's technology, communication, I don't even know exactly what they do, but so I think that's a good one to play short with the NASDAQ today. If we get the confirmation and like intraday patterns to the downside. The next one I'm looking at, similar exactly setup as cores. I prefer the price range. I like the $100 price range more than 200, 300, but still same setup. This one's bounced about 57%, into the 50 SMA, into this previous resistance area here. So both these setups, don't have to overcomplicate it because I think we're still in a stage where a lot of stocks are clearly moving together. You saw the NASDAQ huge bounce yesterday. A lot of these bounced with it. So a lot of things are still moving together. So you don't need a huge watch list today. I think those are the two I'm going to be looking for. I mean, that's my plan, really simple for the day, is I'm going to be looking to short this gap up at some point. We'll see if it's right off the open or if we give a little push higher and squeeze at the open and we look for like a 5-minute trend change. So, I mean, these are probably what I would do, right? We look for a push opening range breakdown, like we get a couple candles here, short the breakdown of the opening range, or we push higher and we get a 5-minute trend change. Here's like the 5-minute trend. If that broke to the downside, I'm speaking ahead of time, like if we're actually at the open. So it moves higher, pushes, pullback, pushes, then breaks down and breaks that previous pullback. That's a 5-minute trend change on the 5-minute chart. Those are probably the two scenarios I'm looking to get short on there. And I'm looking for, that's what I want the NASDAQ to see doing, but you're going to be looking for that on the AAOI or COHR. And those are probably the two setups I'll be looking for, is opening range breakouts or that. I mean, AAOI also has this. I mean, if things want to go right off the open, we'll see where we're opening it. We still have hour and 40, well, let's see, what's that? Hour and 45 minutes until the open here. So we'll see where things go. I mean, it's all relative. I do oftentimes too, another short strategy I'll use is I'll short the breakdown of the pre-market range. Like, so if the market pushes, forms a range, can't move any higher, you can short the support in the pre-market as well on the break. Not as what's the word I'm looking for? Not as high win percentage of a strategy. It doesn't work all the time. So it's a little bit more because the open, that's like usually right off the open, and usually open is a little bit volatile because there's a lot of sitting orders that need to be filled from people that put their orders in overnight. So the market can tend to bounce around a lot and, and hitting all those orders, and it can get easy to just get chopped out real quick and a lot of nothingness. So, those will be the 2-3 trades working. So I'm looking for the NASDAQ long term. Weekly bounce has been happening. That's great. I want to see a pullback, higher low at that point. When we're going to scout for that. We'll use the hourly chart to scout for that on signs. You know what I mean? We'll align that then with other momentum names that we like that are setting up well while the daily higher low is attempting to be set in the QQQ. Short term, I think this is a shortable day for 5 days in a row up. AAOI, COHR are probably the vehicles I'll choose from that. I've been trading SOXL a lot. Anybody who's been watching these videos has seen. That's the SMH semiconductor 3X bull, so he gets a lot of range. I said yesterday that I think, unfortunately, our range is going to be dying out here because we ran the 200 SMA, and I expect we probably enter a period of basing around here. Unfortunately, I think that will play out. We still have good range yesterday. We went from 22 ATR on the 10-day, you could see, 22.44, but yesterday it only moved $16. I think that's going to slowly trickle down, and what happens is after these big moves on these ETFs, now like the relief bounces happened, the volatility tends to die down in the ETFs, which will bring the volatility down in this, which has been an amazing month. I saw some people talking about, like Lance B talking about the best opportunities of the month of July, and he went over a few names. I would actually say that this is a one of the best opportunities of the month for a couple reasons. Volatility, huge ATR percentage, over 15% for most of the month. When you have a stock that's $110, it's moving $23 a day. I mean, that's over 20% ATR percentage. Amazing. But so it's not just the volatility, but also I thought the narrative was pretty obvious on the topping pattern here, and then a clean downtrend. I mean, bouncing the EMA down, bouncing the EMA down, bouncing the EMA down, and you were playing these bounces too. Just great trend action on the short-term downtrend with great volatility. I thought that right there qualifies as like such a great opportunity. The liquidity, I mean, 90 million shares, 149. Anybody can trade this with big ass size. The trend was obvious, the range was there, and it ended up being my number one ticker for the year. So I would say this right there fits the opportunity for best opportunities of July here. So unfortunately, I think that it is going to start to slow down here just because we've had the relief bounce, and the volatility tends to die down once you get a relief bounce here, and I think we probably are entering a range here on the market. So we'll see. S&P 500 at all-time highs despite all the worries. We'll see what happens. So awesome. You guys have a good trading day, and I'll see you tomorrow.